Hello, everyone, and it was great to meet you all during our session this morning. Now, I've been sent a whole load of questions from the chat during the time that we were discussing things together, and so I thought I'd answer them by video so that I can just talk them through rather than giving you more stuff to read. They've been collated into three separate sections, which are job related, my experience and opinion, and some facts. So I will go through them relatively quickly. If you want to come back at me with some more questions, then, well, you know how to get to me. So, job related questions. Number one, what inspired you to do this job? What a really good question. My wife thinks it would be better if I was born in Victorian times when this sort of thing was what everybody did. That's everybody who was educated and not, working in a factory. I think that I'd be very happy in several jobs. I'd love to be, an education officer at a zoo, or maybe working in a museum. The fact that I've done research and slowly wound my way into working at a university, because universities are kind of a hybrid creature. On the one hand, you've got teaching undergraduates all about different subjects, and on the other hand, you've got the research side. So members of staff are supposed to be here to do things which contribute to knowledge. So you do the research and then you teach in the specialist subject that you research. And I started off doing my degree. I did zoology, which is the study of animals, and then I did a PhD, which is a further degree in genetics research on insects. And then I worked on plants because the genetics side of it gave me a foothold in any particular camp that I wanted to work in. When it says, what would you say you classify as your job? The answer is, I'm a university teacher, which means that I stand up in lecture theatres and talk to undergraduates and postgraduate students. And I teach them a module called Life on Earth, which is looking at the variety of living things on the planet. And we cover in that, and not just me, but other members of staff, bacteria-like creatures called archaea, single-celled organisms and seaweeds, and plants and animals and fungi. So all the things that exist on the earth. So I'd say my job is to teach, and I enjoy teaching at all sorts of different levels. Now, the next question's a much more tricky one. What is the day in the life of your job as a scientist? And I have to say that when I'm not doing things like this, which I really, really like, I'm doing the less oxygenating part of any job these days, which is typing. I type emails, I type reports, I type reports on reports, I write essays on the nature of my teaching, and occasionally I write more interesting things about what I've been researching. I look at a lot of the work that the students I teach have done, and I write comments on that. And one of the nice things I do is meet with them in small groups of 5 or 6 or 7, and we sit round and have a chat about the things that we're learning and doing. So I learn from them, and hopefully they learn something from me. So the day in the life of a job as a scientist, when you're in a teaching institution and you're doing a lot of teaching, everything's based around those. If you're in a research institution, then you come in the morning, you set up a set of experiments, or you go out and record some observations, and then you come back and analyze them, and you write that up. So all jobs require some administration. All jobs require mathematics. So I'd like to emphasize that is, don't neglect your maths. It's so important. And actually, don't neglect your English, because it's important to be able to communicate. Okay, so I'm now moving on to my experience and opinion. And the first question is, how old were you when you started studying dinosaurs? That's a good question. When you talk about studying, I'm saying I'm thinking to myself, um, when did I start reading about them rather than playing with toys of them? And that was probably about 7, maybe a bit earlier. I'd started off being interested in fish, then in snakes, then in other reptiles, and then my big sister bought me a dinosaur book, and that was it. I just read and read and read. I went through one dinosaur book after another, and there were lots of rubbish ones in those days. There probably still are, actually, where they were very old-fashioned and very strange. And some of them had people running around with dinosaurs. It wasn't like today, when you have such fantastic toys and games to play with them. So when I was very young, and I've never lost that fascination with them. Next question, how did you collect all of these? The answer is I didn't. I've collected very few of them, although I have made some contributions to the collection. These have been collected over more than a century. In fact, I think our oldest specimens are some of the insects which were collected in the 1870s. So, getting on to being 150 years old. So I have to look after them, because we don't want them falling to bits or being eaten by pests that get into collections. So this is the cumulative work of many, many people. What would be nice is if I had some people to help me catalogue them all and see what we do have, because that's still a bit of a mystery. Next question, what is your current favourite animal you're studying? And I have to say, I've got a bit of a soft spot for tardigrades, these water bears. And if I can work out how to do it, I'll put a pause in the video now, and you can see them. Now would be a good time. Well, hopefully I've done that, and you've seen what a tardigrade looks. They're called water bears. They're very cute, invisible to the naked eye. They're tiny, tiny animals. What is your current favourite animal you're studying? Well, yeah, just done that. Tardigrades. It's got a lovely long name called Hypsibius dujardini, and that's my current favourite. Now let me read the next question, which is, what is the oldest animal that you have collected? Good question. Now, I go fossiling, which means I look for fossils in the rocks, and I found some quite old ones. I don't have the ones I've collected here, but I've got some very similar ones. And I think the oldest one that I've collected is a trilobite. Now, trilobites are small animals related to the animals with an exoskeleton and jointed legs. So that's the spiders, crustaceans like crabs and lobsters, insects, and the millipedes and centipedes. And trilobites have been around for 500 million years, and then they all went extinct. I'm struggling now, about 200 and something million years ago. So they were small wood lice looking creatures. Some of them were huge, but many of them were tiny. You might not even be able to see that, but there's one, there we go, one on that little piece of rock, and they got smaller than that. So as I said, you can get some big ones. Most of them were tiny. I've collected a trilobite. That's the oldest thing that I've collected. If you go down to, is it Charnwood Forest, which is near Leicester, there are some rocks which are over 500 million years ago. And if you're lucky, you can see these weird impressions of animals. Uh, we have nothing that looks like them anymore. They're all gone. They've got this funny name called the Ediacarians, and they're over 500 million years old. I've never seen them outside of a museum, and there are not many museums in the East Midlands that you can go to. Woollerton Hall, I hope, will have some on display in the near future. Next question. You know the microscope? Is it fun looking in it? Absolutely yes. It's brilliant. Being able to see things that no one else sees, that no one else suspects, is things all around them that you can't see. I've been looking at pollen from flowers this week, and then I looked at the pollen in honey, because of course honey is nectar which is produced by flowers, which bees suck up into their stomach, and then they fly to their hives and they regurgitate it out. They collect pollen with that. So I was doing with our students remotely, because they're all in different places at the moment, a study of honey to check whether it was real. Because if manufacturers are giving you sugar syrup and calling it honey, you can tell, because it won't have pollen in it. So yeah, the microscope is brilliant fun. I recommend it, but use school ones if you can, because they'll be much better than the toy ones you can get. Though there are some fun things you can do with toy ones. Okay, some fact questions now. How many marine animals from prehistory have been discovered? Thousands. Thousands and thousands. And mainly they're boring things, okay? So there are lots of, do I have things like these? Mollusks. So many mollusks, because prehistoric animals have to be fossilized, which means they have to be, that when they die, they're washed out and covered in sediment, either in a river, really muddy river, or in the sea. So if you live in the sea, that's half the job already done, because when animals die, they're covered in silt and they go through this fossilization process. So really, for land animals like us and elephants and giraffes to get fossilized, you would have to die in a river or near a river, or get washed out to sea. So that's why the fossils of living creatures are quite, of land creatures are quite rare. And that is also why we have a very good record of animals like trilobites, and a very poor record of small animals. So all the tiny dinosaurs, the bird-sized dinosaurs that were running around, we've hardly got any record of them at all, except when you're really lucky and find them in a special place. I was telling you about that bone bed in China, which has feathered dinosaurs. A volcano erupted there, and sadly, for them, killed everything instantly and covered them in fine, fine ash. Brilliant for us, because when we found them, we've got an insight into the whole ecosystem, all the insects and the other, and the crustaceans and flowers and all the flying dinosaurs and the non-flying. Everything was preserved, and it's absolutely brilliant. In fact, I have a bit of a fossil of one here. So, I hope you can see that. not got the best lighting in here, but these are the wings of an insect that died 100 million years ago. That's quite special. And so these are fossils. No, we need more light, but never mind. Take it from me, on those slabs are some beautifully preserved insects from 100 million years ago. Absolutely extraordinary. The last question is, why are animal bones so different to human bones? The answer to that is a really interesting exploration, and one that I'm particularly fascinated by. We went through the bones of the arm, humerus, radius ulnar, the wrist bones, the palm bones, and the finger bones. We looked at those in a tyrannosaurid, I should say, called Albertosaurus from Canada. And they were about the same size as my arm, but the animal, of course, was absolutely gigantic. If we looked at a horse, and I noticed someone had a horse picture, horses' front legs are the same as ours. They've got a very short humerus, they've got long radius and ulnar, they've got long wrist bones, and but they've lost all their fingers except for the middle finger, and the hoof is the nail. So they stand on their middle finger. These are really weird things. So what I'm saying is that animals have over time adapted to a particular lifestyle, and that's dictated by the environment. And their bones have to fit into the strengths and consequently the weaknesses of that particular habit. So horses, they've got long legs so they can gallop on fingernails, and that is the niche they occupy. But because they've got specialized limbs, they couldn't open a can of drink, so they're a bit stuck. Very few animals have got a thumb that's opposable like us. That's really a unique feature of humans. Even chimpanzees, which have got a hand very similar for us, their thumb is a bit further back. They've got much longer palms, and the best they can do is that. So I'm modelling a chimp hand here. One of my favourite creatures, and this is going back to the marine animals from the prehistoric times, are ichthyosaurs, which are the big sea-going fish lizards. So they are reptiles, so they are very reptilian. They've got reptilian bones in them. They, like us, they've got 4 legs. They've got flippers or fins, but they've got the bones of our hands in them. So I've got one here. There's just a bit of it here. Oh, really struggling with the light. Oh, that'll do. So here we have the eye. There's the lower jaw. There's the upper jaw. You can see some of the teeth here. And here, I've never actually balanced it on my neck before. But where my hand is here, we've got the arm bones. So here we've got the humerus, the radius and ulnar. Then we've got wrist bones, palm bones, and lots of finger bones. So when the ancestor of an ichthyosaur, which was, let's say, something relatively crocodile-like, started a lifestyle that took them to the sea, they slowly became flippers, and they spent less time on land until they went back to the sea permanently and never left it. And in fact, we know this because like dolphins, which ichthyosaurs really resemble, they had their babies live like a mammal does. So this is another case where the reptiles kept the eggs inside them and then lost the eggshell, and then they produced live young, much like a mammal. And if you looked at the mole, we'd have seen that the mole has a 5-digit hand like us, but it's developed into a spade for digging. Actually, they've got an extra wrist bone that looks like another finger, so they've got even bigger spades to shovel away the earth. So animals' bones are different to human bones because we do different things with them. We need to raise our hand, we need to waggle our fingers. These are important for the lifestyle that we have, especially if you're going to be typing on a computer. So I hope that's answered your questions. As I said, if you want to go through anything else in more depth, please get back in touch. And finally, because I found it, because I wasn't looking hard enough, here is the octopus that was found at the bus stop on university campus in 2015. It wasn't you, was it? Because if it was, I'd like to say thank you. It's a lovely and strange gift to have. So I'm going to sign off for this session because I've been talking for 21 minutes now, and it's time to go home. Bye.